Ah, so this is probably the best game I've ever played. I know that sounds dramatic, but I can't help it. I just finished Hollow Knight Silksong a few days ago, and it hasn't left my mind for a single moment since it released September 4th. Before Silksong, Hollow Knight held the crown of best game for me. It wasn't just a favorite, it was maybe the most meticulously crafted, emotionally resonant, and unforgettable game I had ever played. I fell in love with Hollow Knight. Fell in love with its world, I fell in love with its music, I fell in love with its gameplay. It wasn't simply a game, it was a world that I lived in and one that I was obsessed with. So when Silksong finally got a release date, I was both excited and nervous. How could it possibly live up to what came before? I trusted Team Cherry's talent though, but I still tempered my expectations. I thought at best it would be as good as Hollow Knight. That would have been more than enough for me. But I was wrong. I was very wrong. I was only wrong about the second part. I was right to trust Team Cherry. But I was wrong to think that Silksong would only match its predecessor. Instead, it surpasses it in ways I didn't think was possible. It doesn't just expand on what Hollow Knight did, it refines it, it deepens it, it pushes it into territory I could never have imagined. It takes the foundation of, for me, what is one of the greatest games ever made and builds something even more ambitious, more beautiful, and more emotionally powerful. Where Hollow Knight is a descent into a ruined kingdom, Silksong is a climb, a desperate and exhilarating struggle upward. And that shift in perspective changes everything. Hollow Knight is slow and mournful, but Silksong is filled with the energy of the ascent. And there's always somewhere new to go, some mission to do, and a new side of the story to uncover. I've always adored Hollow Knight's visual style. There's something about the way its colors are used, muted yet often vivid, haunting yet inviting, that scratches a part of my brain no other piece of art has ever managed to reach. Everything feels very intentional, every shadow and hue carrying importance. One of the most memorable aspects of Hollow Knight was how distinct its regions were. Green paths of lush overgrownness felt nothing like the desolation of the ancient basin, and the solemn beauty of the City of Tears felt worlds away from the darkness of Deep Nest. Silksong doesn't just replicate that, it pushes it much further. The places Hornet journeys through are jaw-dropping in their variety and intensity. Some are so gorgeous I just want to stop moving and soak them in. However, not all the areas are winners. For instance, Spilewater is a mag-infested hellhole that is way too big and is a nightmare to travel through and should be burned to the ground. But apart from that one place I will never set foot in again, each new area felt more than just a progression through a map. It was a chance to step into a new, creative vision. To see how Team Cherry could twist color, architecture, and atmosphere into something that simultaneously felt very different and part of the larger world. Exploration has always been the best part of these games to me, and Silksong absolutely delivered. My favorite area was probably Deep Docks. Coming right off the Marrow, it continued the scorching vibe, but took it in a completely different direction with the industrial aesthetic. It was an area you had to keep returning to throughout the game, so there always felt like there was a lot more to explore. Plus, it was home to two of my favorite bosses in the game, the first Lace Fight and Cygnus and Grom. And then there are the characters. Just as the environments are distinct yet cohesive, the bugs of Farloom are wildly imaginative, but never out of place. Some are grotesque, others elegant, some comical, but all of them feel like they belong to the same ecosystem, shaped by the same invisible hand of design. What's even more impressive is how Silksong blends aesthetics, mixing angular sharpness with soft curves, bright palettes with muted ones, without ever breaking the unity of its world. Every NPC, every enemy, every boss fits into their niche as if Farloom were a real place that simply existed, waiting to be found. Farloom is a much vaster world than Hallownest, and every corner pulses with life and energy. Where Hallownest felt like a haunted, crumbling tomb, Farloom feels vibrant, teeming with motion and color, yet still marked by the same quiet sadness that made Hollow Knight so unforgettable. Exploring feels endless, as though every step uncovers a new rhythm or secret waiting beneath the surface. Around halfway through the game, I was absolutely amazed every single time I discovered a new area. How could there be more? My favorite part of Silksong's world was the pilgrims. Over the course of the game, you follow them, racing ahead of them sometimes on their quest to reach the citadel high above. Whenever I encountered one of them, I could feel myself connected to every other part of Farloom, tracing the pilgrim's path in my head and wondering what had happened to get them to wherever I was. This is one of the best parts of Silksong's world. Everything is done in suggestions, but those suggestions make the world feel much larger than what you can simply see. One of the most fascinating aspects of Hollow Knight's world was always its characters. Scattered across Hallownest were lonely wanderers, tragic figures, or eccentric individuals who carried lives we only brushed against in passing. In Silksong, this concept has continued. Farloom is alive with characters, each with distinctive voices, quirks, and purposes. Some you encounter only briefly, like travelers who drift into your path and vanish as quickly as they came. Others weave entire storylines that intertwine with your journey, shaping the world in ways both subtle and profound. The sheer density of life makes Farloom feel less like a backdrop and more like a living, breathing society. Like in Hollow Knight, you don't notice all of it until you are quite literally standing on top of it. Farloom is a beautiful place that I fell in love with during my time in this game. Gameplay-wise, Silksong is nothing short of a masterclass. The movement system has been completely reimagined for Hornet, and it makes a world of difference. Where the knight began slowly and grew into agility through upgrades, Hornet starts out fairly mobile, quick on her feet and light in her jumps. But by the end of the game, your movement isn't just determined by the tools you've unlocked, it's determined by you. One of my biggest problems with my other favorite game of the year, Clair Obscur, is that you can upgrade yourself until the bosses are trivial. That is not the case in Silksong. It doesn't matter if you unlock everything in the game. If you are not skilled enough, Lost Lace will still hand you your ass. This is what I love about Silksong. The ceiling for what Hornet can do is staggeringly high, but the game constantly dares you to push yourself closer to it. You get to be as acrobatic as your skill allows, chaining dashes, leaps, and grapples in a way that feels fluid and improvisational. This makes traversal its own kind of artistry. In Hollow Knight, platforming sections could already be punishing, bordering on nightmarish, testing patience and precision in equal measure. Silksong takes that intensity and raises it another notch, and then another notch, and then about 10 more notches for good measure. There are stretches of platforming here that made me want to give up, moments engineered specifically to break me down. But they're still so much fun. The platforming section to get out of the abyss is the single best moment of this game for me. It was pure adrenaline, and even though I died over 20 times trying to complete it, when I finally did it, it was one of the best gaming experiences I've ever had. Something that, out of all my praises for Hollow Knight, always felt a little secondary was the combat. Don't get me wrong, it was good, great even. It had weight, responsiveness, and a flow that few Metroidvanias have ever matched. But when compared to the atmosphere, the exploration, the world building, and the music, the combat never quite stood out as the defining strength. It was a pillar, but not the crown jewel. Silksong changes that. Here, the combat rises to the same level as everything else. The world, the story, the music, the sheer artistry, the combat. It's difficult, punishingly difficult, and sometimes downright cruel. Its ordinary enemies are very difficult and is brutal that so many of them do double damage. But it makes overcoming them so much more rewarding. Like the normal enemies, the bosses are much more creative than those in Hollow Knight. There are so many of them and they're all wildly different. My favorites were probably the Cogwork Dancers, the First Sinner, Lost Lace, and Widow. But the lace fight in the cradle, however, has to take the cake for me. While Lost Lace is the hardest boss that I've ever fought, there's something about the second lace fight that captivated me. It is much less intense and doesn't feel like you are fighting a massive threat. Like the first fight with Lace, it is a dance between two master warriors. Plus, the arena is probably my favorite visual in the game. The black and white contrast matching with Lace's color aesthetic is just perfection. So Silksong won't hold your hand, it won't coddle you, but it never holds you back either. When it's frustrating, it's frustrating. Silksong's difficulty is what most of the conversation around this game is focusing on, which I think is a bit of a shame. I'm not a good gamer. I play video games for their art and story. Look, my only other game review on this channel is Neva. I'm not playing games for the challenge. Still, Silksong is the hardest game I've ever had to play, and while there were moments that it did feel unnecessarily cruel, Silksong's difficulty never bothered me. I don't get angry at games. I've never rage quit before, and I don't intend to. I died a lot in Silksong, but if I felt that there was no way I'd be able to move forward, I'd just pack up and move somewhere else. I died 3 times to Savage Beastfly and then left, and when I returned, I beat it with ease. That's the trick of Silksong. There are parts where you need to grit your teeth and try again and again, but the vast majority of the time, you can leave for a while, come back stronger, and kick the boss's ass. And then there's the score. Christopher Larkin already composed my favorite video game soundtrack of all time with Hollow Knight, so my expectations were impossibly high. And yet somehow I'd wager with a few months of living in this music, Silksong will overtake it. What makes Larkin's work so powerful is that it's never just background music. It's storytelling. Every arena, every character, every emotional beat carries its own sonic impression. The instrumentation shifts subtly between regions, tying itself to the visual palette and atmosphere so seamlessly that you feel it before you even consciously hear it. In Hollow Knight, this was already masterful, but in Silksong, it feels even more refined. I don't really have a good way to wrap up this video, this review. Really, all of this is to say that Silksong was worth the wait for me. It would be worth it if the wait was a year longer or 5 years longer.